Welcome to the Kara Michelle Show, where we break out of the matrix together and return heaven to earth. This is a place for the spiritual seekers and leaders, the dreamers and doers, the conscious creators and world changers. You can expect a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but mostly a whole lot of purpose, freedom, and sovereignty. And of course, all things quantum. May this podcast serve you in remembering the truth of who you are, all that you came here to do, and how deeply supported you are in doing it. You are incredibly powerful and your mission is protected. So it's time to dial up your frequency and recalibrate to your higher self and limitless potential. Get ready, because we're about to blast off. A new reality awaits you on the other side. I'll see you there. Let's talk about manifestation and the difference between when it works and when it doesn't, because this is an extremely key factor that I see so many people getting stuck on, myself included at times. And when you fall into this place, it is absolutely the worst, because not only do you struggle to manifest the things you truly want, or you end up manifesting really chaotic things. And when that happens, you can start to doubt yourself or question, like, if you're even able to manifest, if this stuff even works, and end up feeling disheartened, unworthy, doubtful, all of those things that we don't want to be feeling. So I want to share the biggest shift when it comes to understanding law of attraction and understanding manifestation. And that has to do with whether you are manifesting from your false self or from your higher self. I'm going to distinguish these right now for you. Your false self is your trauma. It's the current identity you have now, which is full of doubts and limiting beliefs, past pain, all these maybe experiences that aren't aligned with what you're calling in. And your higher self, you hear me talk about it a lot, and I personally just like to simplify it as much as I can. So I refer to it in a lot of different ways. But to me, your higher self is a multidimensional self, not just your 3D self. But in the simplest terms, it's like the version of you who has all the answers, the future version of you who has already manifested that desire, the version of you who is fully whole, fully healed, fully cleared from any trauma or lower density obstructions, and they are operating in a totally different frequency, totally different wavelength, and truly a totally different dimension. So the difference between these two selves is drastic. So let's just even take me, for example, right now. My current self, even though I've been doing this inner work for decades, and even though I've been fully committed and come so far from where I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, but there still is trauma. There still is insecurities, anxieties at times. There still is things that trigger unworthiness or who am I, imposter syndrome, right? That's natural, and that is going to forever be a part of reality, I believe, as long as we exist in the 3D plane, as long as we exist on Earth, because there is just so much of this lower density stuff playing out, that I don't know, maybe we're elevating out of it. I don't know where I stand on that yet, but as of right now, I believe this is probably something that will continue to be part of my life, but it gets better every time. And you can obviously transcend and heal and shift layers of it piece by piece. So that's why this work never ends. That's why it's about making it into a game and trying to find fun as you do it. So my current self has still some doubts around the things she wants to manifest. I have a lot of proof of past mistakes when I was trying to manifest these things. I have a lot of um, doubts in terms of, am I actually worthy? Since it's taken this long, is it actually meant for me? Can I do this? Maybe I should give up. There's place for all of these stories if I allow them, which is why my daily priority is to try my best to focus, clear, release those things, and then jump into what is it that I actually want to create? What story do I actually want to give my power to, which is aligned with connecting to my higher self and what they know is meant for me. But if I weren't aware of that, let's take an example in the past where I didn't allow my higher self to come through, or I didn't tap into that version of me, and I was instead manifesting from my false self, from my trauma. And oftentimes, this is when we manifest really painful things. And this could be an example of, I had so many years of unworthiness, so many years of trauma with men, so many experiences that made me feel unsafe, like I couldn't trust them. And my story started to become that I never said men are evil, but I had a story of just like, I it's impossible for me to find someone who's safe. Like they don't exist, like that's a long shot. And so not only was I closing off the positive potential reality from coming in, but I was focusing on the negative potential reality. And that's a prime example of the false self, because I was living and thinking and acting from my wounding, my pain, my trauma. And unfortunately, what goes out comes back. So, cause and effect. That's a universal law. So, my cause my cause was the trauma, the pain, this belief that I wouldn't find nice men, or I'd never be able to be safe around men, whether friendships, bosses, coworkers, partners, anything. That was my story. And so that was the cause, the energy I was in. And so the effect that came back to me was that I magnetized these experiences to the point where even at my yoga teacher training in India, supposed to be so incredibly safe, one would think, the men, aside from one beautiful soul who I'm so grateful for, he was truly my angel and still in touch with him to this day because of it. But everyone else, all the other men working at this yoga teacher training, the things that were said or done to me, to the point of like sexual assault and harassment, to the point of sexual assault by the yoga teacher owner. And I'm in this environment away from home, and I remember just breaking down afterwards, being like, why can't I get away from this pattern, and why is this happening again? I obviously don't want it. I know I don't deserve it, and yet it's like it's followed me here. And this is not me taking accountability. This is where a very fine line comes into play, where he still was responsible for his actions, and his actions were lower masculine. That's not my responsibility. However, I do personally take accountability for the energy I was in, that I believe I attracted it, and I believe I accepted and tolerated it because of all of the false self beliefs, all of the unworthiness, all of the stories that this is all that there was. And therefore, when I received it, I just went, oh, of course, because this is all that there is. So I wasn't surprised by it. It was a vibrational match for my false self. It was a vibrational match for my wounding. So if we want to look at manifesting these amazing things and healthy relationships, or the travel, the abundance, the lifestyle, whatever it is you're wanting to call in right now, I invite you to get extremely, extremely clear on what aspects of the false self and the pain body are still playing out in your field and in your mind, because that is going to continue to attract certain things to you or hold you back from manifesting the highest possible vision, the highest possible reality that's there for you. It's waiting for you. And in a world of infinite timelines and quantum entanglement, where literally energy reacts and responds to who you're being. So when you step out of the false self, let's even continue with that example. If I had stepped out of the false self when this yoga teacher started to do things that were extremely inappropriate, I personally went into fight or flight and freeze. My nervous system just froze. I didn't understand what was happening. I couldn't believe that this was happening in what was supposed to just have been a safe private release session that he was offering to all of the students. And my intuition had told me beforehand, don't do it, because something's wrong with this. It doesn't feel safe. But everyone else had gone before me. None of them said anything. And I dismissed my intuition and I had the session. And lo and behold, after getting me into a state of extreme emotions, releasing trauma, he started to take advantage of me and do things he shouldn't have done. But my response at that time, I had no ability to defend myself, and so I just froze until finally I was like, okay, this has to stop now. And that's when I drew a boundary and kind of panicked. But let's say hypothetically that same situation played out, but in that moment, the second he started to react that way towards me, if my higher self or an empowered, confident version of me had come in, if my nervous system wasn't so regulated to being abused and being mistreated and disrespected, the second that would have happened from him, I would have like stopped it. My power would have been within me, like my higher self coming online, or sometimes also that inner masculine presence of like the protector. We could even say like mama bear protector energy. So many different aspects that could have come online to protect me in that moment had I been more from that empowered self. So, had I gone into that experience in India and say I didn't have the beliefs that this is what happens and this is how men are and this is how my life is going to be forever, and imagine I had gone in there from a more healed version of myself who felt empowered and believed that men always treated me with respect, then had I still somehow attracted it, had he still been operating from the place he was in, I would have shut it down immediately. I would have been so confident and firm. I wouldn't have cared if I lost the investment for the training. I wouldn't have cared if I seemed like I was overreacting or if he made a story out of it or tried to like embarrass me or shame me. Like, I would not have cared because I would have been so whole and full within myself that none of that would have mattered. Does that make sense? Are you getting the difference here between the false self and the whole higher self? So when it comes to, let's take like a positive example, because I didn't mean to go into like trauma, but the pain that's connected to our false self is often what keeps us attracting more of what we don't want and more of those pain cycles. And I know, as I shared, for me, when that happens, it's so hard not to feel more defeated and more unworthy and more full of shame. Because even if you're not attracting it, but it's like continuing to happen, it's just like so demoralizing or depressing to be like, why is this thing showing up? Why can't I have the positive reality, the healthy relationships, the thing that I desire? I see other people are doing it, other people are getting it. Why not me? What am I doing wrong? And so this is where I would say, like, first, let's remove the right and wrong, because maybe it's a lesson, maybe it's here to show you something. That's the personal belief I take on all these things, is it's all a necessary part of my evolution, and I believe I signed up for it so that I could learn, heal, transmute, and then guide and support others in doing that. That's just my own take. But let's look at what happens when you are operating from the higher self instead, in terms of manifestation. So that would be like, even though these things have happened in your past, and even though you maybe don't fully trust a specific thing to show up, or you don't fully know how you're going to manifest this thing, and even though your mind could tell you a million reasons why it can't happen, or you're not worthy, or you're not good enough, you're not ready yet, you continue to embody the energy and be in that version of you who's like, I got this. That stuff doesn't take power. I'm not giving it power. It's not taking precedence. I'm showing up as though this is here for me. I'm open to the ways that it can come in. And actually, in an energetic level, it already is mine. It already is here. That's why I love the higher self, because they're connected to all things. And sometimes our 3D self, we feel disconnected. We feel very separate and isolated and alone, when in reality, you are currently energetically connected to everything you could possibly ever want. You're energetically connected to everyone and everything. And so it's all about just tapping into what is it that you're wanting to connect and see in the physical. What is it that you're wanting to pull into the physical reality now? So when I connect to my higher self and I manifest from that instead of manifesting from my wounding, I bring in the most incredible things in the shortest amount of time. And my manifestation of LA, moving to Los Angeles at the end of 2020, right before lockdowns happened, is the perfect example of that. So my false self and my current self at that time was full of pain and trauma. I had made some business investments that didn't work out. Things were not going the way that I wanted. I had just moved back to my mom's basement after being in Australia and Bali for the winter. I was being led on by a gentleman who pretended he was interested in me, but it turned out he just had very impure intentions, and yet there was a lot of kind of manipulation and confusion there. And I was like infatuated, or thought I was under the impression it was like a lot more than it was. So I was kind of dealing with this like heartbreak and confusion, and yeah, confused about my business, down in the dumps about money and everything. So many different things. My dad needed emergency heart surgery, and we didn't like, he didn't wake up immediately after it. And then the recovery was way longer than most people, and all these different things that were causing me pain. So my present self was stressed out, to say the least. But my higher self is who I started focusing on. And I started prioritizing each day the version of me who was living her dream life. So I did my writing and scripting. I recorded my affirmations to listen to. I would go for my walks and imagine that this was already my truth and be so excited about it. I was no longer overworking or hustling because of the debt, and I was just in a place of trusting that money comes easy. I don't need to hustle and overwork for it. It always shows up unexpectedly when I take care of myself. So I started rewriting the beliefs that I had about all these aspects of my life. And I started focusing in on, we're coming into winter time. Your girl never stays in Canada for winter. I freaking hate it. It's like the coldest winters possible where I'm from. So that's not even an option. But I didn't know where I was going to go, or how I was going to have the money, or how I was even going to leave when they're starting to say that lockdowns are about to happen and no one can enter or leave Canada. but I was not available for any of that. And somehow, maybe thanks to my Taurus stubbornness, I just shut out all possible realities that my false self, that my trauma, that my conditioning, and that like the media or the 3D noise and 4D noise was spouting at me. So it didn't matter who said what, who doubted, what the rules or regulations were, what my current money status was. I just shut that off. I didn't give power to the false self. And I focused on, I'm living on the beach. I get to walk the beach every day and like listen to my music, feel so good and uplifted. I'm with an amazing, like minded spiritual community. I'm creating relationships with people who are doing similar work in the world and are all on mission. And I just feel so empowered being around them, and we're all like doing these amazing things. I am making steady like 5K months, 10K would be amazing. Like I got so crystal clear on the next chapter that I wanted to align with. And I imagined that that version of me was already here in the present. So it's reverse engineering. It's truly about translating the desire into the present moment. So even though none of it was there in the physical for me yet at that time, I thought about what it would feel like. I got grateful and excited about how amazing it was. I took action from the place of, since this is my reality, and since this is showing up for me right now, I don't have to stress about money. I get to focus on feeling good. I get to relax my nervous system a little bit. I get to let go of the judgment or the doubts around my mistakes and just see this as a new clean slate to move forward in. I get to release the past. And one of the biggest things I've noticed after working with hundreds of clients over the last few years that people are very unaware of is they don't realize the power that their past is holding. They don't realize that their past is continuing to create these stories. It's keeping them focused on the mistakes and like, oh, I did this thing wrong, so I can't trust myself now. Or I need to judge and shame myself because of that past mistake. Or I haven't healed and worked on and spent time with this trauma or these limiting beliefs. And so this past experience is still shaping my current moment. So your past is ultimately the biggest thing that we want to let go of. It's gone. And your higher self, that future version of you, is, I believe, the fastest way to do that because they're not limited by it. They're not focusing on it. They're not shaming, blaming, judging. They're just like, I got the things I wanted and we made it. We're already here. And they're like having a dance party because life is so good. So they're not stuck in any of the heaviness. So the more I focused on, yeah, my higher self, I have the time to meditate, to do my breath work, to yoga or dance every day, to journal, to go for walks with my dog and be excited because instead of resenting that I'm back at my mom's house, I'm so grateful that I'm here as I'm manifesting the most incredible glow up and the amazing new chapter that I'm stepping into. So this is beautiful. I get to love it. I get to just embrace it because I know I'm leaving soon. It was this level of like healthy delusion where I was already tapping into the things that I desired. And so out of seemingly thin air, a newer friend of mine reached out because there was this opportunity to move into a beach house in Los Angeles. LA was not on my radar by any means, but I knew I wanted to be by the beach. And then all of a sudden, here's this beach house. It was like 10 bedrooms or something and like 15 people. So there was like my beautiful new spiritual community. They were all doing incredible work in the world. So I made these amazing new friends and I manifested a job doing some coaching for a friend of mine. So that started to pay my bills. And then my coaching business started to become more easy and fun and flowy because it didn't have the pressure of my debt. And all of the things that I once was tapping into or dreaming or manifesting were suddenly there right in front of me. I literally said yes, booked my flight the next day, I think, paid the deposit for the rent the next day, and within a week, I was flying down to Los Angeles to start this new reality. And this is the power of co creation. This is the power of you being in alignment to your higher self and to what's actually meant for you. Because if there's one thing I could say to younger Kara, it would be like, I don't want to cry. It would just be like, little Kara, you don't deserve this stuff. Even if it's showing up for you right now, you deserve so much better. So, like, don't stay stuck here. And that's what I was doing because everything was repeating so often. The pain was piling up. The doubts, the limiting beliefs, the unworthiness were getting louder and louder. I could have easily stayed in that cycle for the rest of my life because it had repeated so much. It felt so normalized that unless I had been so determined to not stay there, I would probably still be there today, 5 or 6 years later from that experience in India. And that's the power of not settling. And that's also the power of operating and manifesting from your higher self instead of your false self. Because your false self is going to lie to you. It's going to say, well, maybe this is what you're meant for. Maybe this is all that you deserve. Maybe this pattern keeps showing up for a reason because you're not worthy of anything better. And I want you to know that false self is fucking lying. And it's evil and it's not meant to be listened to. It's not meant to be given power anymore. There's a very big distinction when you connect to God or you connect to your higher self. I'm sure you have felt it at some point in your life. Maybe you can feel it right now. When you connect to a loving presence, those voices don't have power and you realize they don't have to be true. A loving creator would not say, you deserve to stay in that trauma. You deserve to stay in that pattern of being abused. You deserve to stay in a place of debt and feast and famine and never knowing how you're going to get through the next week or the next month. Your higher self and God would not say that. They might say, hey, what is this showing you? Is there a lesson? What changes can you make? They might help illuminate things that need to be cleared out so that you can break out of that cycle. But they will never ever tell you you deserve to stay there. They will never ever say, yeah, we're going to keep you there for a bit longer because you deserve this suffering. That's only the false self, and the false self is created from trauma and extremely poor programming that has been passed down for generations. So tune into a loving frequency to your higher self who's like, babe, I got you. Come over here. Let's go. It can feel this good. I promise you. Just open up. Just trust me. Just, be open to a different possibility. Be open to the reality that maybe, just maybe, you can get out of that pattern. And I'm not dangling a carrot on a string to cause you more pain. I'm like truly bringing you and guiding you where you're meant to be. Just like entertain that possibility for a moment. Feel the frequency of love and what that actually feels like, and let that be your guide out of your current reality. And start tuning into the things that you actually want, because by doing that, you're going to start to attract them. You're going to become magnetic because you're already being it. There's no more separation anymore. You're already being the state of the wish fulfilled. You're already feeling the frequency, the gratitude, the excitement, the overflowing joy and love of like, wow, this is amazing. This is so great. And so the corresponding reality has to come in. But let that higher self be the guide. Let that manifest for you. And I don't think you'll ever be let down. The only times you'll be let down is, as I said, sometimes things have to clear out first for that to go. I recently just had some crazy things take place that I would not have chosen by any means, but they needed to explode so that I could leave that chapter fully behind and step into what I actually wanted. So my higher self was actually doing me a service by getting me out of that situation. So the more you start to learn how to trust your higher self, trust that intuition, that deep inner knowing, and trust in a connection with God, the more you can be led down the path and manifest what is actually meant for you. Because last thing is sometimes it's not even as obvious as my example in India, but sometimes you still are manifesting from the pain, and your current false self, the pain, the wounding, the trauma, is saying, oh, I think I want this thing, I think I want that thing. And maybe you do end up manifesting it, and then you realize, oh, I didn't actually want that. That's what someone else told me I should want, or that's what my trauma thought would make me feel better, but I actually don't feel any better here. So if you open up to your higher self and a higher power and say, what do you want for me? What is actually the highest good? What is meant for me? And that's what just happened for me recently. My false self, my current self and ego thought, oh, this is the right thing, even though it didn't feel good, even though my body had been telling me for months, this is not what you're meant to be doing. My mind got pulled in. My mind convinced itself that I could do all the things and that this was actually the right thing to be doing. And it needed the shakeup of my higher self. It needed things to become extremely intensely clear that this is not the path I meant to continue on. And the freedom that came from that after, where it was like, oh, I'm actually now more aligned than ever because I'm reconnected to my path, my highest calling. And that was a manifestation from my trauma. That was a manifestation from ego or false self, thinking that something would make me enough when it wasn't actually the something that I wanted. So discernment, but I don't want to get into that anymore because this will then become a 3 hour episode of me talking about too many things. But the point being, start noticing which version of you are you operating from each day and each moment, because it changes moment to moment. I still fall back into the false self. Every day there's still moments where that self comes through and doubts or judges or thinks it can't happen. So my job as a conscious creator is to become aware when I'm slipping into that and to shift myself back out, to be able to pull myself into alignment with, no, no, that's not getting any more power here. That's not where I want to stay. I'm going to jump into focusing on the future and, like I said, reverse engineering, bringing it back here now into the present so that I can feel what it feels like to already have it. So I can feel the joy and excitement of it already being here. And then I can take the alignment from there and watch as it manifests. Be open to it manifesting. Be excited about the fact that it's already manifesting. And if this is something you want any more help with, my online courses are incredible with different layers of this journey, whether it's the quantum healing hypnosis work to shift your energetic signature and help clear out traumas or pain and wounding from your energy body, as well as from your subconscious mind and that storehouse that is believing, that is telling you who you are each day and possibly telling you that from a wounded lens because of the way it was printed in years and years ago. So the subconscious reprogramming work, as well as through my Thrive program, which is all about clearing out the trauma and deconditioning who we think we are, getting out of that false self and connecting to your higher self, because they know the answers, they know the way more than I do. I'm just here to guide you back home to yourself and to help you trust your own intuition, your own connection to source, because you've got it and it knows the way. It wants to bring you there. Remember, it doesn't want to see you stuck in pain or suffering. But we've got to take the steps sometimes to clear the things out first so we can listen and hear it and trust it. And then that's when all the magic happens. That's what makes the difference. So there's a bunch of links down below to check those out. You can always send me a message on Instagram to find out what would be the right fit for you. Otherwise, start applying this now and start tapping into the higher self, the future self, and letting that false self go. And you're going to feel so much better from it and attract so much better from it. So I'm excited to see and hear how that plays out for you. And I'm sending you so much love, and I will talk to you again soon.